Today's guest is Dominic Vella, who is the founder of Fantastic Fence, which he scaled from one truck to a high volume operation, doing thousands of projects a year. Now he helps other business owners break past seven figures with practical systems, no hype, and lessons learned the hard way. So, Dominic, thank you very much for being on the show. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited to dive into this. I know we had a bit of a conversation prior with regards to like, there's a lot of these commonalities that pop up when I have owners come in and kind of do this whole show with regards to like, okay, what's my leadership like? How does that translate into how I delegate and work with my team, etc. So I know you did the assessment prior to coming on here, so I'm just kind of curious, in your words, if you can sum up, what came up for you from that analysis, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah. From the summary after it, enlightening. I mean, honestly, kind of impressive that from a more limited number of questions that it can kind of dead on nail my leadership style, the good and the bad of it. And we can always improve. And a big motivation for me doing this was I'm curious as to, where I can improve.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I guess I'll kind of go down some of the points that I had from the assessment that you had filled out. So
Right.
when you did it, kind of like your top dimension of stress drivers, which are these combinations of thoughts, feeling, and actions that negatively impact your peace of mind, your productivity, or your delegation. That's kind of how I define it. So for you, the top dimension was around like the interpersonal or team stuff. And whenever that pops up, I always say like this is kind of the dimension of like overly nice leadership, like taking this core characteristic of like I'm just generally like a nice empathetic person. I have like high attunement to what people are feeling, doing, etc., which can be great and they can serve you well in things like, sales and managing that things don't fall out of order.
Right.
But then when it's distorted and taken too far, it goes into this kind of like nice guy syndrome where, you're not like avoiding confrontation, you're not keeping people accountable, and there's like overcompensation happening with regards to like I'll just do it anyway.
Right.
Um, so it's like driven by like a good intentions, but it oftentimes creates these inadvertent profit and time leaks. And I was highlighting to you like, okay, that's kind of part of it, and then the result of that is you're constantly trying to keep up and like basically operate from urgency, right? Like this is
Right.
popping up, this is popping up, this is popping up. So that was kind of my interpretation of what you had marked down in the
Yeah.
assessment. So tell me how that A lands for you and operates
A
like
hundred
day to day.
percent. We have a fairly large team, and I'm always worried about everybody else. And in the end, I'm like, okay, I'll fix it. I'll make it better myself. So I'm always the one that's running literally 100 miles an hour. And a lot of times in business, also it it cannot be a good thing. I do avoid conflict. I probably more than I should. I have learned to deal with that in different ways, having other managers that are much better at it than me, having tough conversations. I like the great conversations. I like the pat on the back conversations. I really avoid the other ones. So I put levels between me and possibly people that I'm having to have conversations with, which has been a ointment to solve it, but not really a solution. Right? It's like it's not. I know that I need to get past that and be able to have those direct conversations. So that was a key point to me.
Got it. So basically, it seems like you've systemically gotten good at buffering against
Yeah,
this by putting
yeah,
other people in between you and it. But like in the back of my head, it's kind of like it's always theirs. It's always going to be a limiter in some sort of way.
100%. Because also those conversations also carry on not only into your business life but also into your family life, right? And into friendships and everything else. So I think solving it in one place, maybe it's easiest to solve it in the workplace. Where there's not as much emotion tied to it. And then that can carry across into the rest of your life.
100%. And I always say like the stakes are always going to be the highest in family dynamics because all of these
Yeah.
things overlap. If you've ever heard, so there's a Ram Dass quote that I oftentimes use with clients in many different contexts, which is like if you think you're enlightened, go spend time with family. The idea being like, yes, we work through these and we get through a lot of these patterns, etc. And then there's like always the next layer and the next layer, right? Which is why family always has the highest stake. So I
Right.
always say, yes, definitely do start with the business aspect of it because fundamentally the structure is in place where like your role is one where like you have the authority by the nature of the dynamic, right? Like if you're
Right.
the boss, if you sign the checks, that has an inherent authority to it, which is like a good place to actually practice this because it's not like a one-to-one dynamic where it might be with a spouse or, somebody else in your family. So it's
Yeah.
more as
It
an aside,
doesn't.
but anything you want to comment on that by all
And,
means.
and those things are not as permanent, right? Where an employee-employer relationship, you may not be as worried about the permanency of that spouse or kids, family, extended family. That carries a lot longer a timeline. So yeah,
100%.
yeah, good
100%.
to practice there in the
Yeah.
employment area.
Okay, good. So you definitely seem to be like very self-aware, right? Like you
Yeah,
understand these patterns. I think nothing that I presented to you was necessarily new, but it was new in terms of how it, I think, combined together, and maybe succinctly was presented to you. So
yeah.
what I'm curious is having the awareness that you have, what have you tried to do to solve this that because it clearly hasn't worked. So like I'm just curious, like what have you tried to navigate around this?
Well, in the workplace, it was putting buffers in, right? And that was my okay. These things need to be addressed, but I don't want to personally address them. Um, I think that the other way that I do it is I have a lot of conversations, but I dance around the conversations versus not not directly saying what I think needs to be said a lot of times. Um, the the other aspect of it is the frustration on the back end. And that came up in part of our conversation was, you go on and on and on about it. And then eventually you get to the point that you're like frustrated. You're like, why is this not going anywhere? We've had all these conversations, but really the conversations were not as direct as they probably needed to be, you know? So I think that I've spent a lot of time and effort and dancing and trying to give good examples to people, but never truly saying, you need, I need from you for you to do this, and being very direct about it.
Okay. So basically, most of the efforts have been around optimizing and engineering the environment to deliver
Oh,
the result without addressing it head on.
yeah, 100%. That's exactly right.
Okay, fair enough. And it's generally the first place people start, right? Because you have so much control over your business. So kind of it's your decisions to make it. So it makes sense why you want to do that.
Yeah,
So in that case, then if you know that now, like, okay, I'm kind of, well, actually, okay, let me confirm with you. It sounds to me like part of the reason why you're here is I think you've reached kind of the ceiling of how far that can go.
correct.
Like I've only engineered so much. If we're going to go to the next level, I think certain things have to be more direct. Like, is that accurate for you or no?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, okay, got it. So in that case, if you've taken out all the options to engineer the environment to buffer against this, what's your take on then, like how do you define this problem personally?
Mm, Say it a different way. How to define it personally?
So basically, it's like, okay, if I've run out of options to engineer my environment,
Yep.
then what's left over to solve? Like in your mind, how do you go about solving this particular problem? And if you have no idea, like that's a
Yep.
fair answer
Okay.
as well. I'm
And
just
I think
curious.
there's two ways of looking at it. I think the first thing that I'm coming to the realization, and in the process, I kind of thought about this was, you know, if you're not being honest with folks, you're actually doing the disservice, right? Versus just being honest with them. And while it might be a hard conversation that might last a few minutes, everybody's probably for the better off, right? And also, a lot of times, I would make up in my mind that it's going to be a much more difficult conversation for the other person than it truly will be for them. So maybe it isn't as bad a piece of news information. I just don't want to disappoint anybody. And a lot of times I'm put in a position where, I don't want to disappoint. And that becomes the bigger opposition, which you can make bad business decisions because you don't want to disappoint people. There might be ebbs and flows in the economy, ebbs and flows in what you need for a workforce. You hold on for an extra year and don't let anybody go and release anybody, even though the numbers say you should, right? Because they have families and you don't want to, let them go. So, but we had to go through that maybe 6 months ago, and I thought it was going to be significantly more traumatic for everybody. And all the people involved, for the most part, told me we knew it was coming. We understood, and they were okay. And it was a much better scenario. I think the net of it is coming to the realization that you have to do these and have these conversations, and knowing that it's okay to do that.
Perfect. Okay. So one, because there's a few different elements that I'm going to just reflect back your way. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth between a
Okay.
few. So number one, there's basically like a mindset shift, right? These are conversations that at the end of the day benefit everybody. So I kind of have to have them. I have to stop avoiding them, right? So like as uncomfortable as this is, I just kind of have to go forward. And as is always the case with things that we perceive as threatening, it's never as bad when we actually do it versus
Right.
prior to it. Okay. And that seems to have worked out for you so far in this
It's
one
working.
particular instance. Yeah. Okay.
It's working. We're
Okay.
going there.
Okay. Perfect. So, and that was going to be my follow-up question then. That, like, you have the right frame of mind around it. So clearly the mental shift on like what needs to happen, the seeing the situation objectively is not an issue for you because you see exactly what needs to happen. You
Yeah.
see exactly what the problem is, right? So you can kind of willpower your way through doing the thing that's uncomfortable. And I guess my question to you is that sustainable for you for the goals that you have in terms of where the business wants to go?
Good question. Probably health in a healthy sense, no, right? Could I get it there? Sure. I could probably get this down the road, will it be as smooth a ride as I want it to be? Probably not. And I think that there is a significant amount of it that I do want it to carry across into my personal life, and I do want it to carry more across into friendships and to, other acquaintances that I have versus it just be constantly a pleasing situation.
Yeah.
Not, a lot of times I think you probably have a lot of A players that don't want to let anybody down. They are always A players and they want to make sure they're an A for everybody involved, not just for themselves. The game and the battle is really not about for myself. I feel pretty accomplished myself, but it's really about, okay, who else can I take along on this ride with me? So
Yeah. And the nuance that I'll add to the A player thing, because this comes up oftentimes as well, is so your A players will like pull the drag and compensate for the B and the C players. They will do it quietly and with resentment
yeah,
because one of the key things that A players want is not to be held back by things that they
right.
shouldn't be actually dealing with. So like they're never going to outright tell you that. But oftentimes when I have nice leaders in front of me and they check off, well, I can't keep or retain A players, generally it comes back to that. Like part of the
Yeah.
reason they're A players is because they carry the B players, but they're only willing to tolerate that so much before they're like, okay, I'm gonna go leave somewhere else, right? So if that is
Right.
like a recurring thing, if I'm working with
And
somebody, it's just like that's usually where the conversation goes. So what lands for you?
Correct. And that is a piece. So what I was saying about the bumpy road, right? That is a piece where as we top grade here, I realize that we need to make sure that we are fostering an environment that is really making sure that our A's and our B pluses are really taken care of, because otherwise we will lose those A's off the top, because you know a lot of A's really do struggle with knowing that they are getting the same compensation, getting the same treatment as other folks. And so that is my as we continue to top grade over the years, um, you know, that is a concern. So being able to be honest is important.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm gonna get back to the second point that I was gonna make. I'm going a bit of a tangent here, but like what you just touched on here is basically how do I create a culture of A players?
Mhm.
And one of the hardest things around that question for overly nice leaders is the fact that you create culture to the degree that which like, to the degree that you say no. So like
Okay.
you actually create culture through subtraction, not through addition, meaning these are the things that we tolerate. Like, sorry, these are the things, these are the standards that we have, and these are the things we don't tolerate. The things we
Okay.
don't tolerate are the things that we cut. So the people, the systems, the situations that continually point to like this actually isn't in line with our culture, this isn't in line with our standards. Those are the things I say no to. Sometimes that includes saying no to people, sometimes that includes saying no to processes, to
Right.
clients, whatever. But it's like, what is the hardest thing for the overly nice leader to do? It's some version of I got to say no, right? And this
Right.
is going back to the original point of in when I originally asked you the question, kind of like what is the core problem? One of the
Right.
places where your brain went to was, I don't want to disappoint the other party. Well, how do you disappoint the other party? Generally, it's some version of saying no, right? On the extreme end, it's
Right.
I'm firing you. On kind of the lower end, it's like this wasn't right, or whatever other confrontational type thing is. So it's like the degree to which I can create a successful, high-performing culture is equivalent to the degree that I continuously can say and referee the boundaries around what I say no to. Like it is no that is a steward of that particular um, culture. So anyway, I know that kind of went in different directions. So
Yeah.
like, what lands for you with that?
That it's wild that like to me it makes complete sense. And at the same time, I would never have thought of it that way because we're so used to build bigger means add more, which doesn't mean like refine or like put in constraints, put in barriers or guide rails, right? And that's not adding more. My we're usually like pour more fuel on it, like right, give more tasks and everything else. So it's like it is actually profound that you say that.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad that's landing, and I'll take another detour now because it's jumping into like a different, related, overlapping thing, but kind of a different direction, which is um, this default of ambitious people to go for more. Right. So,
Mm,
so you're already a successful business owner. You've gotten to here. We kind of started this conversation being like, well, I'm kind of at the ceiling of like where I can maintain these patterns. Like I have to kind of address them directly now. I can't engineer my way out of them. Okay. So what's the first thing that they will do? Okay. So how do I do more? Like, how do we get more A players? How do we make more processes? How do we get more clients? How do we get more trained? Like it's some version of more.
right.
And while that has its time and place and it's part of the formula of what got you to where you are, what happens at certain points is like you forget that the goal is actually to move closer. Okay,
Hmm.
so closer to what? Well, closer to the thing that I actually want. So let's just say if we're talking about the culture of like high performance or A players. Okay, so if I want to move closer to that being the goal that we work towards this quarter, this year, whatever. Okay, so what are the things that are going to get me closer to that? Well, now we go back to the previous conversation. It was like, okay, how many things am I saying no to? How many boundaries am I actually refereeing? How many examples of the things of the standards that we're upholding am I actually upholding like day to day? Now it actually becomes an operation, like a your own operating system of like, how do I
Hmm.
actually get closer to this? Right. And oftentimes what you'll find is like with A players, you're able to do more with less. They
Hmm.
actually operate on kind of like more of that commander's intent. Like, what is the thing that I want? Why do I want to do it? You go figure out the how. Whereas it's usually the B and C players that are needing all of the steps outlined in the
Right.
how. And obviously, there's, industry things you got to like consider in individual businesses, like where those things overlap. But like as a broad mental
Yeah.
model, how do I
Generally.
move towards this? That generally is where it comes down to. Like recognizing that closer is a much better North Star than like more because our brains will always default to more. So again, what lands with all of that?
I mean, that I agree with that. And I agree with that. And you know, understanding that you need to coach, right? So the instead of just adding more to everybody's pile and adding more people and adding more tasks and adding more fuel, maybe it's about taking the current team and also coaching it a little bit more, right? Putting in those guide rails and showing people what where they can succeed as well. So I think a lot of times I look at it as I'm going to have a difficult conversation with somebody, and I make it out that they're going to be upset, they're going to be sad, they're going to be whatever, but truly in the end they're not, especially if I can show them maybe where they might benefit from it. Now at the same time, I've also learned in times that through a lot of experience, that my goals of more are not everybody else's goals. And that's a tough thing to accept. So I've had to come to the realization that, okay, just because I'm a more person, that doesn't mean that they are. And I have to go into that conversation with the understanding that they may not be, they may not action as much as I think that they will action in the back end. But in the end, I might have to make decisions one way or another. But at least I have coached them, as much as I can possibly coach them. I heard one time a long time ago, it said, listen, if you've done all the coaching you can do and people don't see something coming, then, and they don't see it coming because you haven't really spent the time with them, right? Then that's on you as a leader. But if you've really coached them and you've spent a lot of time with them, you've done everything in your power and you've been clear, you've been really, really super clear with them, well, then you did everything you could, and you should sleep well at night. And so that's held true, and that's falls along the lines with this exactly, which is the be honest with everybody.
Yeah, 100%. And just to again add the mental model version to what you started initially saying with the, okay, maybe I should just coach my current team more, kind of like focus on that, see if there's any low-hanging fruit there. The kind of one of the guiding principles that we always use when that situation comes up is like, okay, so we optimize before we maximize.
Mm,
Meaning, like, if currently what is there is not optimized, then the focus on more or the defaulting to more is just going to blow up more of something that's not
more,
actually working,
yeah,
right? Which is then a bigger headache because then you have to like revert back and et cetera, et cetera. So,
yeah,
yeah,
they
go
got
ahead
more
if there's
problems.
anything to comment on
Yeah,
there.
yeah, and that's exactly it. Like a lot of times myself personally, at least, I'm always like, okay, well, that is over there is cooking, but let me add some more things, just in case what's cooking is not as good as one might hope, right? So we'll put even more things on the plate, on the table, right? And so I'm always adding more, but you're right. It's maybe I need to stop and make sure that we're cooking what we're cooking, we're paying attention to. Otherwise, we're just going to burn everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. And it's a hard part because, what makes you successful is like you've always kind of like done the thing, but it's just like at some point I actually have to let go. And the more I meddle, the more things break. So I know
yeah,
that's a hard transition. So, okay.
yeah,
I didn't want to steer too far off of kind of these
yeah.
more general strategic mental models, which, we can go down that rabbit hole as well. But I think what I want to make sure like you leave with something tangible here today.
Sure.
And I think it goes back to, um, like when we start talking about, okay, I don't want to disappoint the other party. I should always tell the truth. To what degree can I willpower my way through like ensuring that that happens every time, right? So
Yeah.
if you look at those moments where you're about to have those conversations, okay? So
Mhm.
logically, you know what to do. You know what needs to be said. You understand the situation objectively. What's the like what is it that stops you from having from saying that whole thing?
That is a good question. I think if we can cross that hurdle, we're there.
Okay, good, good.
I mean, I think that sometimes we don't think of things in logic, right? We separate the logic and the emotion out of things. And I think that a lot of times I take things emotionally. And that's the logic is totally 100%. I get it. And then I get to the emotion part and I'm like, oh, I don't want to disappoint them, So I
Okay,
think that,
perfect. So I'm gonna cut you off, not
yep,
because I'm trying to cut you out, because I
yep.
think that's a very important point that you just made, which is you're right. It is about the emotions. Now, I don't want to disappoint others is actually the thought you have on top of that emotion. It is the
Yeah.
belief that drives it. So what's the actual emotion when you think of those conversations?
Um, I think it's probably the desire to be liked, right? So
Hmm.
it comes back to probably back to me. I always like everybody to like me. I don't like to be, the unliked whatever parent, friend, and that probably ties back to I feel like very much a chameleon. I can work along with every group, every type. Um, Probably comes back to having a smaller subset of friends when I was a kid, but also having very, very good friends. So I don't know if it ties back to that. They say everything ties back to your childhood. Maybe it does, but it probably really comes back to wanting to be liked by everybody else.
Okay, perfect. So I don't want to disappoint anybody. Underneath that is I essentially want to be liked by as many people as possible. So now we're getting clear on, okay, well, what's a desire that's driving the belief? Okay,
Mhm.
but if you remember, my original question to you was like, what's the actual emotion? So your
Mhm.
brain kind of deflected and or didn't know the answer to that each time. And it's not a judgment call, it's just this kind of what
Yeah,
tends to happen. So if you had to like go a layer deeper, what's the actual emotion in that moment?
I don't know. It's in terms of wanting to, why not to disappoint people?
So I'm about to have the conversation that I logically
Yeah.
know I'm about to have. Okay.
Okay.
I logically know what the business, what the objective situation calls for.
Okay.
So kind of like you mentioned prior, like, oh, I dance around these conversations. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So like you know what you need to say, but like
Yeah.
we're having 45 minutes on something that could have been a 3 minute conversation. Right.
Yeah.
So during that 3 minutes, what's the actual emotion that's driving that behavior of this dancing conversation?
Definitely the desire to not it's a desire that I feel like everybody has to like me.
Okay.
And
And if
I
they
think that,
don't like you, then fill in the blank.
ooh, then I lost.
Okay.
Like
What did you
I
lose?
I didn't win in a general sense. Like
Mhm.
I think that I tie everything back to a winning and losing situation. And
Okay. And I'm gonna interrupt you cut off
yep,
because like
yep,
we're
100%.
moving to something, so I just wanted to know it's not on purpose.
Yep,
It's okay. So I'm losing something or I'm not winning. Cool.
yep.
We're getting somewhere, and neither of those are still an emotion,
Hmm.
right? So, and that's fair. We can get to that eventually, right? So
Yeah,
this is like either your brain is resisting saying what it is because it feels vulnerable, or just it doesn't actually know. Both are okay. So we'll kind of discover which
yeah,
one. So if I'm losing, if people don't like me, what are you losing? What does it
right.
mean to lose in that situation?
I think it's a matter of I disappoint myself.
Mm,
So like
okay.
that, like I could have, I think I look at it as a way of I could have solved that problem, right? Like, okay, I could have
Okay.
danced
So
around it
people
for
not liking me is a problem that I win or lose.
correct. A
Okay.
100%. Yep.
Perfect. So now that means if somebody doesn't like me, which is actually something I don't actually control.
Hmm.
So
But I
whether or
think I
not I
can.
win, whether or not I'm able to solve a problem, whether or not my self-esteem in some ways is affected,
Oh, for sure.
entirely defect is affected by something I don't entirely control.
Yes. For sure. 100%. It
Okay.
comes down to a self-esteem uh, challenge. And in truly, you don't control if they win or if they do like you or don't like you. But having the mindset of I can make anything happen, I'm going to make you like me.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
yeah,
So maybe a different way to ask the question is then what sensations are you experiencing in your body when you're basically optimizing to be liked? You're spending that 45 minutes talking about a
yeah,
3 minute conversation. What are the
anxious,
sensations happening in your body?
like anxious that you
Anxiousness. Okay.
hope that they go, oh, I get it. And they see the light the same way you see it, that they realize it. So I never have to tell them, right? Like I can paint them such a picture that they're like, oh, I see it now. Right. And instead of me being like, okay, you don't see this, but let me tell you what's in the picture. So, um, so then I don't have to feel that I lost. I disappointed myself and disappointed them,
Perfect.
which is wild, by the way.
Okay.
Like,
Wild in what way? Like this isn't something you
I
realized,
mean,
or like wild in what
it,
way?
it it's wild that it can hold so much power in just the fact of having a conversation with somebody that truly in the end it may not be that big a deal, but I've worked it up in my brain that it's a massive deal to not disappoint people. But truly, the best people in our lives, we do disappoint sometimes. My kids, I mean, I love them dearly and disappoint me sometimes, right? They make a poor choice or they do whatever. And I don't dislike them anymore and they don't dislike me. Maybe I make a choice that they don't like. I choose that they are in trouble for something and they don't like that. But it actually makes our relationship better because if I was the Disneyland dad all the time and there was no barriers, man, I mean, it'd be fun in the moment, but it would definitely negatively probably impact our relationship in general.
Yeah, because it doesn't teach anything, right? So
Yeah.
110%. Okay. So I think you now have a little bit more clarity on like what's actually driving this thing. Because this was like it
Yeah.
took a little bit of time to get here,
Yeah.
probably about three, four different prompts, but we got to the feeling word, which is anxiousness.
Yeah. I like to bury it.
Of course, yeah. Who wants to feel anxious all? It's much nicer to say. I just try not to disappoint people and make everybody happy.
Right.
That's the bow that anxiousness actually wears, right? Like that
Yeah.
that's the packaging of that whole piece. So
Yeah.
why bring this to your attention? It's like if you now look at the onion that we've been building, right?
Okay.
So at the very top, it's like, okay, I've engineered my business to the degree that I can buffer all of these kind of conversations, and I've engineered it enough, but it's kind of like there's nothing left to engineer if we're going to go past this point, right? And this is
Okay.
everything we talked about, more versus closer, the A players saying no, boundaries with my A team, like all of that kind of is at this top layer, right? So now
Mhm.
underneath all of that, okay, so I've buffered it, but there's still some conversations that are left over. Okay, cool. So with those, I now have a choice. I can either willpower my way through those conversations, which is very much going to be dependent on, you know, how much sleep did I have that day? What else is going on? How busy am I? Is it the beginning of the day? Is it the end of the day? Like that you have a finite amount of willpower to be able to push through these conversations.
Right.
Not to mention, if I'm having a lot of 45-minute conversations that could have been 3-minute conversations, I'm also wasting a lot of
Yes.
time that's energy that could be wasted or sorry, spent towards building the business, right? So
No,
that's
it's
kind of
wasted. It's wasted.
yeah, fair enough. But
Yeah.
the reallocation of that is useful time.
Oh,
Like if
massive.
I have the
Yeah.
3-minute conversation, okay, it was uncomfortable, I move on. Now I've got 42 minutes to spend building the business. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like in that
Beautiful.
way, it's a waste, but the reallocation of it is definitely like that's actually the part that now gets you to the next
That
level,
sounds
right?
exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. I'm glad you're getting this out of it because that's actually what's on the other side of this, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, and so okay, so you got like the top objective layer, you got okay, what am I now doing in that? And now you're getting into like the individual, okay, what's happening within me,
Right.
right? So part of it, kind of that the packaging on top of that is okay, I don't want to disappoint people, I want to be liked. Okay, but now we're getting into, well, what's really driving that is I can't really lose. I can't
Mhm.
lose people not liking me because that's going to hurt my self-esteem. So at the core of all of that is this anxious feeling that's basically saying, okay, at all times you just have to optimize not for what the situation objectively needs, but to ensure that I'm actually liked. So like your system is constantly scanning the world, looking at your decisions, looking at the conversations, looking at what needs to doing, and taking it through the filter of is this going to make me lose or not? So you're
Right.
not really playing to win, you're actually playing to not
Yes.
lose the emotional comfort of
Yeah.
I need to be liked. So I know that was a lot presented your way. What's landing with all of that?
The last part, especially the part of you're constantly playing to not lose, right? Versus playing to win. And that is it's really that's a profound statement because you really are. You're playing a much more defensive situation. And you're worried about everything in a defensive situation versus just winning, just continue, which is funny because everything else that we do has to do with propelling forward and not being stopped and push, push, push and see, let's get to the top of the mountain and let's see what's at the top of the mountain. You're right. And then let's find a different mountain and we'll go climb that one. So So it's interesting to look at it that way.
Yeah. And this is one of those kind of interesting things because you're in that space right now of kind of that business adage of like what got you here won't get you there.
Right.
In the space that I tend to operate in is like, so kind of when clients enter my world, it usually kind of starts off something like this, like businesses scale, roles evolve with that scaling, but then the identities don't usually keep up with what's happening, right? And if you're looking at everything I'm describing for you, it's like your business is growing, you've implemented all of these things, the roles within that are evolving, people are becoming A players, people are shifting, etc. But the identity, like that started the business, which was I don't want to disappoint anybody, and I'm just going to create and engineer my world so that I never have to disappoint anybody, right? That's gotten balloon to this point now where it's not keeping up to where your ambition actually wants to go, which is it wants to
Right.
go beyond this thing, right? There's
Right.
nothing wrong with the ambition. It's just now this is becoming an identity bottleneck. It's not becoming like an operational bottleneck. It's got operational consequences.
Right.
The core of it, it ends up being identity. So what lands with that?
So it it's interesting because right, because now you're talking about like your personality and your person, and then that gets right back to you're like, well, you I think a lot of business owners we can cover up exactly everything else going on in life because we're like, but in the end, the net is my business is successful. So hence I'm successful, right? And then we cover it all up with that, and we just stop right there. So that's the end of the conversation. So, so when you get to the point of, saying, okay, now we need to unwrap the onion, right? And we need to look at it, actually look at the onion and what's there. Um, that it's a softer side you have to look at, and understanding why you're looking at it. And understanding that the logic needs to come through. So, um, yeah, that's pretty much what comes to it for me.
Okay, perfect. So really then it comes back to exactly what you said. Okay, so I'm faced with this kind of the mirror showing my way. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. It makes sense. Yes, I see it. And at the end of the day, the business is still successful, still making money. Like I don't need to like go down this thing, right?
Yeah, you like to say
So
that,
yeah, but I mean, everybody always says that because it's like, okay, well, it's not costing me money, then is this really something that I have to solve?
right?
And this is where it comes out like it is very much a personal choice. You don't need to solve this. And then the opposite side of that is then acquiesce, then like this is the ceiling that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right. So it comes down to a personal choice of, okay, well, why would I want to actually look at this? Like what's in it for me to look at this? So what's your reflection on that question?
I think that every single day I walk out saying, what can I learn today? What can I improve today? Like, I think that that is actually probably one of the most powerful things with a lot of business owners. A lot of business owners that are progressing have a significant desire to improve. And a lot of times we improve our businesses, but we don't improve ourselves. And then eventually you come to the realization that, maybe I am the bottleneck at some point, right? And I think that's kind of where I am with that. And like you said, a lot of times you have businesses that are scaling or transitioning of some type, and that's where this conversation really becomes. Because what got me here may not get me to where I want to go. So yeah,
Yeah, 100%. That's why kind of like one of the first guiding principles we all like I start all of the programs with is you first got to own 100% of your 50%.
yeah,
So especially when it comes to interpersonal people issues, yes, other people are a factor. Yes, there's things that need to be implemented to, navigate that. And they're only going to be ever as good as the 50% that I bring to the table, right? So classic example here is like, well, this is the standard we need to uphold for quality. Cool. If you don't referee that, then you are enabling the tolerance of whatever other subpar standard somebody else ends up choosing.
yeah.
So that is my 50%. It is irrelevant of how good I am at setting those standards and creating the systems around them. They're only ever going to be as good as the bar that I set and referee up until that
Yeah,
point, right?
I do. I do appreciate the fact of saying own 100% of your 50%. because that's truly all you have control over.
Correct.
But the rest of us are, well, not the rest of us, me, myself personally, I'm trying to control the entire thing. So,
Yeah.
because we are constantly trying to control and navigate and get the boat to where we want it to go. So, it's very enlightening that you say just control the 100% of your 50%.
Yeah.
That's good.
100%. So
Yeah.
yes, I agree. Okay. So then the last part I wanted to just kind of bring it back to, because I usually goes in this direction is okay. So if you understand that the root of all of this, that's kind of driving it is this anxiousness, right? That's the
Yeah.
part that wants to be liked. That's the part that wants to control. That's the part that's always reactive. Then it comes down to like, okay, how do you solve for anxiousness? Like, do you have the toolkit to solve for anxiousness?
Hmm. Good question. I think an overwhelming amount of logic can solve, right? If I told you, okay, go get in a plane and take off, you're like, wait, is it safe? It leaves the ground and it goes really high. But you also know the statistics that planes are much safer than even vehicles, right? So at that point, you're like, okay, I can do this. Logic can override emotion as long as there's enough logic, right? I do really what you said, which is control the 50%. There's two factors that you said: control your 100% or your 50%. That way, I don't have to feel like I have to control their 50% at all, right? That's a masterpiece of a statement. And also the fact of you're playing a defensive game where you're trying to continually defend your emotions. You're continually trying to defend the fact that you are not losing or you're not disappointing, and release that and let that be, and control you, but don't feel like you have to defend for that all the time, which is just a defensive game. Um, I don't think that most entrepreneurs want to just play a defensive game. We're probably the biggest gamblers out there. We gamble in a more educated sense, but not so much, but we are the biggest gamblers out there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Perfect. So if you bring that statement, which to some degree I fundamentally agree with, like that there is a level of logic that can override the anxiety you might feel.
yeah,
If you bring it back to those instances of the 3 minute, 45-minute conversations,
yeah.
what level of logic do you need to make that a 3 minute conversation?
It depends on the. It depends, I guess, in two parts. Number one, how big the conversation is, right? I mean, some conversations you'll be able to cross that hurdle much simpler, right? Some conversations you also work up in your brain that the conversation is going to be much bigger, rightly so or incorrectly, either way. And those ones will take more, I guess. But I think it comes down to just having the general logic that you are doing a disservice to the other person by not being honest. I think that is partly what is resonating to me, is that you really are doing a disservice to the other person if you don't stop defending yourself and trying to protect yourself and your own personal emotions. If you want to be the person that is there for other people, then truly be there for other people. And that means that you need to stop defending yourself and just be honest with them.
Okay, perfect. And I would assume that honesty has like is a value of yours even prior to this
Oh yeah,
conversation.
massively.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's been part of your operating system even going into these conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. So why were you not able to use that logic to cut the 45-minute conversation into 3 minutes?
Because I was going to be honest with them. Just I was going to guide them instead of just being honest with them.
Okay.
Right.
I was
So
going
so
to guide them
yes.
with honesty to
Yeah.
what?
To the same resolution that I have. Right.
Okay.
So
So that's basically a nice way of saying I was going to manipulate them into believing what I believe so that they wouldn't be mad at me.
yeah, that's the other way of saying it. Yeah.
Okay. So which is basically another
Also
way to control.
also accurate. Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
So in that instance, that's still driven by the anxiety,
Yeah,
right? Like
I agree.
if you weren't anxious, do you think you'd need to manipulate them or you need to control where the conversation goes or guide them into a conclusion if you weren't anxious?
No,
Okay.
no, because I could control my 100% of my 50%.
Correct.
And
So in that
then,
instance, your 50% is driven by anxiousness. It's driven by an emotion that wants to control the outcome so that you
right.
basically are liked at the end. Okay.
Yes.
So can you out logic your way out of that situation?
I don't know. Can I? I don't
It's
know.
your experience, right? I'm just highlighting it back to you. I mean, I do have and yes, I want to highlight something, but I'm just trying to
Yeah.
see where your head is at around this.
I think that I can. I mean, to a certain extent, I think that I can, at least at this point, that is my in this wildly short period of time. I think that is, that's my next route to try to be able to control it, right? Will that be
Okay,
the end
perfect.
solution? Probably not.
So let's look at it this way, and I'll explain to you why I'm asking these questions, right? So
Yeah.
whenever I have smart, successful entrepreneurs in front of me, this is usually the first sticking point we have to get to, which is if you're trying to use mental tools to solve emotional problems, you only lose 100% of the time.
Okay.
Okay. I know that sounds harsh. I know it sounds like I'm also leading you to a conclusion, but I'm going to kind of highlight to
Okay.
you why. So, in those moments of the 45-minute, 3-minute conversations,
Hmm.
if you felt enthusiastic,
Hmm.
would you need to logic your way or guide them or manipulate them into any conclusion if you felt enthusiastic to just share the truth?
No, I wouldn't,
No,
because it would just come out. Yeah.
correct. So
Hmm.
is it actually the logic or is it actually the emotion that drives what you end up
No,
ultimately
the
doing?
emotion for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So in that instance,
Hmm.
if it's the emotion that actually drives what you need to do, then if you had a tool set to like fix the emotion, would that
Hmm.
not be a faster way to kind of get to the resolution that you want?
Yes. Do you have a tool set?
I mean, I do. And I think what I'm trying to, I'll get you to kind of explore this a different way, right? Because you said
Okay.
one of your values was honesty. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if you've listened to the podcast before, but I use this
Yeah.
example all the time. So, if I told you to imagine you stealing something right now,
Okay.
okay, what do you feel?
Uh, Confused as to why I'm stealing something.
Okay.
Confusion. Yeah.
Perfect.
And probably disappointment as to there's a reason I'm stealing something.
Hmm.
Like I must be hard up to steal something. Yeah.
Perfect. And if you bring yourself like even deeper into that visualization, and you're like, okay, like this is the moment of, let's just say you're shoplifting and like I'm gonna
Yeah.
steal this phone, I'm gonna put it in my pocket. What are you feeling at that time?
My girlfriend's a district attorney, so I'll probably get in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. Then that probably heightens it even more at that point.
Yeah, yeah. But no, it's I'll get caught and
Hmm.
it'll be embarrassing. And or I'll even just know that I did it, which is just as traumatic, I think.
Yeah. So there's a level of fear of like getting caught in the trouble of that. There's a level of disappointment, potentially shame around what it is that I'm doing, etc. So if you absolutely had to steal in that
Mhm.
moment,
Mhm.
could you use logic to willpower your way to that behavior?
Yes, if I thought that for some reason I could logic that it was going to do significantly better, it would significantly help somebody out, then yeah. Like the Robin Hood theory, I guess, right?
Okay,
Uh,
I'm not like in this instance, sure. Now we're just kind of like basically we're justifying and making it, I'm not
yeah,
disappointing anybody because I'm actually stealing for other people. So like
yeah.
that part's kicking in. Okay. I just meant more in terms of like, okay, if you had to like willpower your way to do it for whatever the reason is, you had to do
Oh,
it.
if I had to do it, I think I could. Yeah, but I don't know, man. It'd be tough. I feel like I could do it just because I feel like I could do anything, but
Yeah.
that's the only reason I feel that way. So
100%.
like,
Okay.
yeah,
So do you see how much energy it takes to even
yeah,
just visualize stealing?
yeah, it's wild.
It is wild. Yes. Now, it is wild because one of your core characteristics is like a core part of my identity is I'm an honest person.
Yeah,
Okay. So if you're an honest person doing things that are against what your core identity is rooted in, takes a
uh,
whole lot of energy to even just visualize.
yeah,
Okay. So, for example, if I asked you not to steal, what do you feel?
great. Yeah,
Like at best, like or at worst, rather neutral, at best, great.
yeah,
Do you have to do any work to not steal when you go to a store?
no,
Do you have to willpower your way into it?
no,
Okay. So that contrast in your body, right? So who I am is somebody who's honest. And if I do things against who I fundamentally believe I am on a body basis, because I kept asking what you feel, and then we figured out what you think about that. If I don't steal and I'm in line with who my body knows I am, especially my nervous system, my unconscious knows who I am,
okay,
effortful, like effortless, like it's just simple,
right,
easy, neutral, exciting, whatever. If I go against who I unconsciously believe that I am, super hard to do that.
right,
Okay. Now, if you bring that example back to the 45-minute conversations,
yep,
okay? So who I am is shown by my default behaviors, meaning the
hmm,
easiest path that my unconscious takes is to drag out a 3-minute conversation, 45 minutes. Why? Because who I fundamentally am is somebody who does not want to disappoint anybody whatsoever.
yep,
And if I do willpower my way to have the 3-minute conversation, what do you got to do? Push extreme amounts of logic to it, spend so much energy willpowering my way to it. Hence, what we started this call with is like, is that willpower a sustainable way to get through this pattern?
no, because you put 2 days of willpower into having a 3-minute conversation.
Correct. Because it's fundamentally at conflict with who I unconsciously believe that I am.
Okay, fair enough.
Right.
Yep,
And that's kind of where I was getting at with like that's an emotional problem, right? It's happening on
yeah,
the emotional kind of nervous system level. And yes, you can definitely influence it logically. It's just there's always going to be a cap on your ability to do that. And then if your business requires you to do that at more of a scale, then that conflict is going to be a major limiter. Okay. So what kind of lands for you with that?
how do we fix it? I mean, it is 100% true because I would spend trying to push the logic. It's like pushing an elephant. You're going to spend a whole lot of effort to make it happen. Uh, so addressing the emotion and not the logic is the true solution.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm not trying to like avoid the how do I fix the conversation. The way that
yeah,
I operate, so I have basically like a toolkit of different tools to use. Like, okay, so for example, just even today's conversation, you had a belief that was I can't disappoint people,
right.
right? Okay, so we need tools to break that belief on a mental level, right? Then it took us a whole bunch of prompts to get to, well, what's the driving emotion around this? Oh, it's anxiousness. Okay. Well, then we actually have to break down what are the emotional conflicts you're experiencing. And this goes back to the stealing, not stealing,
Yeah,
right? Basically, wherever I'm comfortable doing an action, that's where my identity is rooted in, regardless of
mhm,
what the consequences of that action are. So if I need a different action, we got to see, okay, what are the emotions that are actually running that thing?
right.
So we have an indicator of that. It's a different tool set to actually navigate resolving those conflicts. And then the third part that we didn't really talk about is kind of the nervous system, right? So you have spent thousands of repetitions and decades of your life repeating scenarios where you're optimizing for being liked.
Right.
Over time, your nervous system has just learned this is what we do to basically survive in these situations. So you need a toolkit to both regulate and then create a new normal around just the basic comfort of like, okay, I feel okay doing this. Like I know it's a rough conversation, but like I'll be okay. You know,
Yeah.
like that conflict lessens. And that's
Right.
usually how like I look at this is like it's not a one single solution. It's At
Oh, for
what
sure.
level do we need to do what in order to basically align? I know what I objectively need to do. Emotionally, I'm aligned with it. Mentally, I'm aligned with it, i.e., I feel the exact same way that I think about stealing.
Right.
Neutral or excited if I don't steal, and the behavior I don't want, I feel like I got to really work hard to do that behavior. So, does that make sense on like what?
Yeah, 100%. It is. It really is creating a new normal, which is fine because I'm only 49, so I got plenty of time. So,
Yeah. Well, listen,
but
some people go their whole life and ignore that problem.
they never
So,
do it.
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right, right. I feel like this is really, really profound because really, truly, in the end, otherwise, I would try to just power my way through it, right?
yeah,
Because that's, I think, a lot of times what I don't know. I feel like a lot of founders just do that. We learn that in a lot of other aspects of our business. We're like, well, you just got to work harder. You just got to put in more hours. You just got to push, push, push versus actually solving the core center of the onion.
100%. And that's also why, like, kind of I built that because you have to feel it, right? Like me just
Mhm.
telling you, okay, but this is an emotional problem. It's not a mental one. Like you're never going to
Right.
buy that because why? You have decades
No
of
emotion.
evidence being like, I've plenty of time not wanted to do something and I've done it and I've gotten a good result out of it. Like, why does this have to be any different?
Right.
Right?
Right.
So this is like you and every other successful entrepreneur. It's like you've literally made it because you've been able to overpower what you emotionally feel in the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And as we get back to the beginning, that has worked until it doesn't work anymore.
Correct.
Right. And that's kind of where we're at. So I guess okay. I know the follow-up is always like, okay, how do we solve this? It's outside the scope of like me being able to solve this for you on air here.
Sure.
But in terms of
Sure.
like the clarity around what is actually driving these patterns, what's at stake, what the lay of the land is, is that clear for you? Do you have any other questions around it?
No, that's that honestly, it's perfect. Yeah, super insightful. I would never have looked at it in these fashions. Um, and yeah, no, I super appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, listen, I super appreciate you coming on and playing all the mental gymnastics that sometimes needed to get here. So thank you for that. So yeah, listen, Dominic, appreciate you for that. And floor is yours. Let everybody know, where to find you, who's the best person to find you. Floor is
Yep,
yours for that.
yep, yep. My name is Dominic, and I own a company called Fantastic Fence in Sacramento, California. If you just search Dominic and Fantastic Fence, you'll find me on pretty much every medium, LinkedIn, and usually I chat with most people on LinkedIn. But yep, I'd love to reach out if I could ever be of any assistance to anybody.
Awesome. Well, as always, we'll include that in the show notes. But yeah, Dominic, thank you very much for being on and for everybody else listening. We'll see you on the next
Yeah,
one.
appreciate it, Jessica. Thank you.